before it gets much worse and put more money back in your pocket. Trust me, I've been there too. Call right now.
Call 855 993 2096 right now. That's 855 993 2096.
Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of Biz Talks. My name is Rick Gutierrez. I am your host and your business advocate. Hey, this is the place where business entrepreneurs, business professionals, business owners, they come here to share their knowledge and everything and anything that has to do with business. They're going to share some insights, tips, and tricks as to what has helped them along the way, and then they're going to be sharing some of their services and products as well so that we can get to know them a little bit more. So we're going to have an amazing show today, and I'm excited about it because the lineup of guests that we have today have a tremendous amount of years, decades of experience in business in their own field. So it is my honor and privilege to have Mr. Greg Schaefer back on the show. Welcome back, sir.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, it's always a great opportunity to have you back. We learned a lot every single time that you are here. You provide an extensive amount of knowledge with your services, your company, and just knowledge of business in itself, you know, that you've had throughout the years. So it's always a great conversation. And I think this week is going to be no exception. We're going to have a great conversation sharing some additional details about your company, what you guys offer, and all that good stuff. Does that sound good to you?
Absolutely.
All right, wonderful. So one of those episodes when you were here, we kind of touched on this briefly, but I kind of want to dive in a little bit more into this because I think our viewers could potentially learn a little bit more about your company, VCSO Services LLC, and the strategic information security expertise that you guys have, particularly in the small and the mid-sized businesses. Let's talk about, let's dive in a little bit more into what a virtual chief information security officer does and how your services differ from a traditional in-house person, whatever you want to call it, technical person that you have in-house. So typically it's a security officer that has, that's inside in their teams, in their own realm of business, but you guys provide something a little bit more. What do you guys do over there?
So a virtual CISO is going to be a part-time information security consultant who ideally has years of experience as a chief information security officer or similar. We talked about that before. But one of the issues is that the demand for qualified virtual CISOs is a lot higher than the supply. So sometimes someone who has extensive information security risk management experience makes a good virtual CISO as well, because that is what we do. It's about information security risk management. In that sense, it's the same as what a chief information security officer does. Now, there's also still that supply issue, but there are now coming out in the industry, I'm aware of at least one certification that helps to fill that pipeline, if you will, of virtual CISOs. This is a certified virtual CISO is what they call the certification. Kind of makes sense, I guess. And the idea is that it's an apprenticeship type program that helps to fill the need, because we're seeing so much more of that SMB, small and mid-sized businesses that need that specific experience, but they don't have and they won't have an in-house security officer. They just can't afford the expense. They need the experience. And the same thing with like security teams. You mentioned like what's the difference? So small and mid-sized businesses are going to have smaller security teams, if a security team at all. And even if they have a security team, a lot of times it's just part of information technology. And sometimes there can be a little bit of a conflict of interest between the two. You have a system administrator that's also monitoring the system and you're missing a little bit of the checks and balances. But it's a different environment because of the size and because of some of the needs, the smaller business, that it is for a large business. And what other difference is that A virtual CISO is a consultant, and that's a skill set all its own. We're
Hmm.
not staff, and it's more challenging sometimes to establish those relationships that we need to establish. So I wanted to finish by emphasizing that sometimes even I mentioned that full-time virtual CISOs make a good virtual CISO sometimes, but not all of them can transition because of these differences.
Yeah, I think it's a very big difference in my personal opinion. There's a lot of businesses out there that have an internal team, but they're not secure, necessarily security based, right? They're
Mhm.
not. That's not their focus. That's not their forte. So, what would you say to a business owner right now that says we're good, we have an internal IT team that's taking care of all of those things? What would be your suggestion?
Well, I'd emphasize that IT security is not the same as information security. It's a subset. And that's one of the that's one of the that's why I don't like the term cybersecurity sometimes, because it implies that everything is just IT related. So my response would be, well, let's talk about it's kind of the broader part of the information security program. Do you actually have a strategy for information security? How does it match with your risk tolerance of the organization? And when you start having those conversations with small and mid-sized businesses, they begin to have that, I guess, like the light bulb coming on over the head. It's like, oh, I didn't realize this. I thought it was just all about having servers and having firewalls and all of that. And once you get that aha moment, then it becomes more of an integrated business issue, and then we can move forward from there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very big difference. So, my recommendation is to talk to an expert. You've got one here, you're listening to one here with Greg Schaefer. So, talk to an expert in information security because it is very different from IT security. So, Greg, one of the other questions that had come up was, what are some of the significant changes that you've seen in your industry? I mean, you've got well over decades, let's say, of experience in your industry. So, what are some of those significant, changes that business owners could potentially, are not paying close attention to?
Well, back in the day, the communications were more point to point. There wasn't distributed like you see on the internet today. But um, as time went on, and the Defense Department, I think it was in the United States, had created this networking technology to break up those communications into little pieces of information. And therefore, those little pieces of information can go on different paths, which is great in case the original communications line was cut. But what came with that was a greater exposure of an attack surface, if you will. So as time has gone on, we've seen more and more applications now that have leveraged this quote new technology back in the early and mid 90s. And then one early challenge for me, as far as in my professional career as a new technology, was the beginning of music sharing on the internet. And there was a program called Napster at the time. I was in charge of the network for a large university in Tennessee, and the students love to come to the university to, I mean, obviously to get an education, but they loved being housed on the university because there was high-speed internet access in the rooms there. They, not what they were accustomed to at home. This was still during the time of dial-up networking. So what was happening here is that um, this when you build new technology, there's going to be like all sorts of ways to take advantage of it. Some of it good, some of it maybe has unintended consequences. And here they were sharing music files, and that created a big problem, not only from the music industry because of the copyright and loss of revenue, but also from the networking side because of the bandwidth just being saturated. So eventually, what happened is that we figured out how to manage the bandwidth, the music industry figured out how to manage the copyright. That was all taken care of. And then as time went on, this has really been the cadence over the years as technology grows. There's nothing different. So you have technology evolves, applications evolve, misuse evolves, controls evolve, and then we start the dance all over again. And we adopt to those changes by understanding not only understanding what historically what has happened, but also understanding the new technologies that come out and the potential threats that they could pose.
Now, Greg, if I'm not mistaken, did I hear you say the word Napster from back in the day?
That's what I said. Were you a user?
I remember the software, I remember the program, but I was not tech savvy back then. I mean, this was new. Like, what was it? Like the early '90s, I think, or something like that.
I think Napster was about like 97, 98, 99,
Okay,
so a little
so
bit past that, but yeah.
late 90s. Lord knows that back then I did not have any technology whatsoever, so I did not have anything to do with it. But it's just kind of
I wasn't
that's
blaming you, don't worry.
no, no, no. Well, the thing is, what I'm trying to highlight here is that we have an expert in the information technology space that has been in business for many decades, and this is the expert that a lot of our viewers need, and that's the reason why you're here. That's the reason why we bring this value of your knowledge and experience, and the reason why I mentioned and went back is because just to kind of showcase that we're not just only talking about you being in your industry for many decades. You actually gave a prime example there because mid 90s, late 90s, that was a couple of decades ago. So
Yep,
that's
yep.
the reason. That's the reason for highlighting that. You are an expert, and we appreciate you being here. We are going to take a quick commercial break, folks. Stick right there. We'll be right back with another episode with Greg Schaefer again.
Do you have diabetes? If you have insurance, you may qualify for a new continuous glucose monitor. With a CGM, you can continuously track your levels and trends, spend more time in range, significantly lower your A1C, and share important data with loved ones and caregivers. Most importantly, a CGM eliminates the one thing most people with diabetes hate: painful finger sticks. Take charge of your health. Order your new continuous glucose monitor today. If you use insulin and have seen your diabetes care provider within the last 6 months, you may qualify for a CGM today. We'll do all the insurance paperwork and deliver your new CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost to you. Medicare and most insurances cover continuous glucose monitors, so don't wait. Have your insurance handy and call the CGM Health Hotline now.
Are you nearly maxed out on your credit cards? It doesn't matter if you're using your credit cards for fun or to survive. At the end of the month, your statements come in, and you can either pay them or you can't. If you can't, late fees and interest rates get tacked on. And now you're struggling just to make the minimum payment due. Do you feel trapped? Am I talking to you? Good, because I personally researched some companies that can help you. They may be able to reduce your credit card balances by 50% and stop the late fees. If you qualify, please call our special debt hotline number right now for a complimentary free 5-minute consultation. Deal with your credit card problem now before it gets much worse and put more money back in your pocket. Trust me, I've been there too. Call right now.
Call 855-993-2096 right now. That's 855-993-2096.
How would you like to go on a 5-star vacation for just $99? We're talking about the quality of a Westgate resort for $99. Not for one night, but for 3 fantastic nights at one of their luxurious destinations across the United States. And you'll even get a free $100 Visa gift card just for making a reservation. We've got some of the choicest destinations that you'll love in the United States that you can choose from for just $99 for a 3-night stay. Take your family, take a special loved one, but get away. Go on vacation with Westgate Resorts. Call now to make a reservation for just $99, and you get a free $100 Visa gift card. Call Westgate right now and book your vacation. Here's the number.
Call 877-930-3491. That's 877-930-3491. Again, 877-930-3491.
Hey folks, welcome back to Biz Talk. My name is Rick Gutierrez, and we've been having a great conversation with Greg Schaefer, the owner and founder of VCISO Services LLC. And we're going to continue that conversation because, man, we just a lot of great information that can help our viewers and business owners, business professionals in terms of, information security and how important it is to have that and have an expert on your side. So Greg, we're going to continue our conversation, and it's in terms of, the small and mid-sized businesses, often face quite unique challenges when it comes to information security. What are some of the common vulnerabilities you encounter with your clients, and how do you help them address these issues effectively?
Well, I think one of the items is that they don't have a method for logging or viewing the logs of their systems. And why that's important is that if you can't have visibility into what's going on with your systems, you may miss an instance where somebody's trying to penetrate into the systems, or that information is being exfiltrated or transferred without authorization. Or sometimes they do, like a lot of SMB, small and mid-sized businesses, they'll use Microsoft 365. It has some pretty decent logging features, but people don't know how to use that. Um, they also sometimes don't understand the need for a security program. Sometimes they see it as an impediment to their business, or maybe just a strict compliance issue. Um, and of course, there's always the big issue that they have, and that's like a lack of a budget for information security. And that can be a big deal. And that's understandable because particularly the smaller business, and when you're talking about startups, they're going to have like really, really small margins. And they're trying to control costs as much as possible because they want to take the profits that they earn and put it back into the business itself. So from our perspective, that's really where it starts. We have to be mindful of the budget of the organization along with their associated risk tolerance. Like a smaller business may have a higher risk tolerance, particularly again in the startup field, because, well, that's how you build businesses sometimes. And we need to be able to communicate with them exactly how the risks can meet or not meet their risk tolerances. And what we'll end up doing is that we'll work with them creatively to come up with, uh, I'll say, adequate controls to mitigate the risks as much as possible. But that's a lot of like jargon to say, to figure out strategies to make sure that things are still able to get done and while making it as safe as possible. Now, finally, and this gets back to the monitoring. Remember, I started the answer by talking about that sometimes SMBs don't have decent monitoring in place and they can't.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then that transfers to your staff. Your staff becomes your eyes on the network. And we encourage the businesses to look at them that way, to encourage them to speak up if they see something odd, or even if they did something. Sometimes, Rick, if someone clicks on something, they're like, oh, I can't believe I did that. I don't want anybody to know. I don't want to make, and that's human nature. It's understandable.
Right.
But if you can encourage the staff to, look, we understand that people make mistakes. Everybody does. I do. Not too often, but I do. Um, but it's important to encourage that you make a mistake, report it, because then if there is an issue or if you see something odd, then we can address that proactively before it really does become a problem.
Absolutely. And then there's times to where the problem, gets uncovered and it comes from one particular unit, one particular computer, one keystroke or something like that. And then people would say, well, you clicked on something, and the response is typically, well, no, I didn't. Technically you did, otherwise this wouldn't be an issue. Somebody clicked
Right,
on
and you don't
something,
want the
right?
pointing of fingers. I
Yeah,
mean, that's not
exactly.
productive at all. So
Exactly. With that being said, one of the other key things that I heard you say is the budget, the organization's budget for information security. I think, one of those things that most businesses are not realizing is how crucial it is to have a budget, to have these systems in place, to have someone on their side that is always looking out and keeping things, completely secured and only visible to themselves and not to the world. So I think that that budget is something that our viewers, our business owners need to be cognizant about and hire the right person, the right company, the right services, and have a budget set aside for this, because it's crucial nowadays. With that being said, that kind of leads me to the other question, because of hiring, vendors to take care of some of those things. Vendor risk is a big thing right now, and also it's crucial to the component of a very robust information security program. Greg, can you share some insights into how vCISO Services evaluates and mitigates risk associated with third-party vendors? Potentially maybe one of your clients that you've helped here recently?
sure. The main thing that our clients that we emphasize to them is that just because you're using a third party to manage something. It could be your email or your file storing. Like, for example, we talked about Microsoft 365. It doesn't absolve you of the responsibility to make sure that that information is secure. And that's why we have vendor risk management. And so what is that? That's making sure that the vendor that you're using is taking care of your information. And usually it starts with looking at a third-party attestation, an audit, if you will. Some people might have heard of the term SOC 2, for example. That's very, very common. So you look at the SOC 2, you see if there's any issues, and then the wise evaluator, the wise business, will want to look a little bit deeper to make sure, well, okay, does the supplier have good security policies in place, good training in place? Are they doing penetration tests, all these long words and all that? But at that point in time, if they can get an insurance that their information is being protected, then we always talk about that compliance doesn't equal security, but a good solid information security program will meet compliance with just about all the regulations and standards out there. That's what we encourage businesses to do. And I could say that I have one example, except for that we do this with every client that we are working with. So it's a fairly routine methodology to ensure that they understand, first of all, as I said in the beginning, that they're still responsible for the protection of their information. If Microsoft, for example, suffers a breach and you have something on SharePoint and that gets out, well, your customers are still going to hold you responsible. And then we work with the organizations to build up the vendor management program to make it less of a check the box exercise and more of a true risk management exercise.
Absolutely. I mean, it's something that we always have to keep be mindful of, and making sure that our information is, protected as much as possible. I mean, essentially, as a business owner, it is our responsibility to make sure that the information stays secure, but then hiring the right people to help you even further, I think that just kind of gives a different layer of protection overall. So, Greg, one of the other questions that we had from the last time that you were here, and we're going to dive in a little bit more into this, but let's say something happens, somebody hit the wrong key or clicked on a link or something, and now we have an issue. Let's talk about disaster recovery, which is something that I don't wish upon nobody, nor anyone wants to go through, but it happens, right? So businesses need to continue, and the planning is essential for all of the organizations out there. Let's talk about a specific example of a time where vCISO Services helped one of your clients develop and implement comprehensive disaster recovery plan.
Sure. Well, in one instance, we're evaluating a business's business continuity plan first, and that's more of the risk management side of information security. And how does that relate to disaster recovery? Well, disaster recovery is the IT support portion of business continuity. IT makes sure that systems are brought up in an order, or kept online in an order and in a priority that is commensurate with the needs of the business. So the business continuity plan will say, we need to have this service available, and IT understands, okay, I need to make this happen, whether it be starting up another generator or bringing this system online or what have you. It's all specific to a particular business. Well, in this particular, the example I'm thinking of, it was with a credit union. We discovered that the IT department could meet the business requirements of what we call recovery time objective, or RTO. So the RTO is essentially the measure of the amount of time that the business can be down without suffering significant losses, whether it be loss of income or reputational risk, those sorts of things. And so this is a bad thing, and you don't want to realize this when something actually does happen to cause businesses like a hurricane to shut down for a while. You want to make sure that you have this understood, at least in place. So what we ended up doing, because sometimes organizations just simply state a number because they have to have it in their business continuity plan, a number that, okay, our RTO is going to be, we're fine 4 hours, and then after that, things are bad, or we're fine for 4 days, and then after that, things are bad. They just put down a number without understanding the actual implications from the IT side. So getting back to this example, this is for a credit union, And as a result, we changed a couple of things. First, we updated the recovery time. I think specifically for the credit union, it was their mortgage department. And we updated the recovery time objective, which then managed expectations. So the mortgage department, I don't know the exact numbers, but let's just say that the recovery time was 4 hours, but then we determined that realistically, because of IT limitations, it was actually 2 days. Well, this gave the mortgage department the ability to create additional processes just in case they had to be down for more than one business day. That was the short-term solution. Then the long-term solution was to help with IT and operations to come up with a process and a plan to bring that RTO back down to the desired level of 4 hours. And so the result, Rick, was that we had a stronger process without discovering the gap when an actual event happened.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a phenomenal way to take care of risk management and disaster recovery. I mean, it's an amazing opportunity to have you here on the show. Hey, we're getting close to the end of this segment, Greg, but I don't want to end this segment without giving you an opportunity to talk about your book, Information Security, and some of the key things, principles that you advocate on the book. What are those key principles?
So information security for small and mid-sized businesses. You can get it on Amazon, by the way. 5-star rating, solid. We encourage that businesses understand the differences between information security and cybersecurity. I kind of mentioned that a little bit beforehand, but there is a huge difference, cybersecurity being the technical part of information security. And this is important, as I mentioned before, because sometimes you have the impression that information security is only technical. And that's really not true. We also emphasize the importance of choosing a framework, because just like you're building a house, you don't just start going out there with lumber and concrete and nails and just start going willy-nilly, and you're going to end up with something that doesn't look too good. You start with a plan. You start with a blueprint. That's what a framework is. We work with them to create a framework. The book talks about a couple of frameworks that SMBs can use out the gate, such as the NIST cybersecurity framework. And then finally, same thing that I've said beforehand, we promote information security as risk management. It's not a perfect field. You're never going to be completely secure. But in order to maximize the security, you need to become somewhat proficient in risk management, or at least understand it. And that's what I really tried to do with the book, Information Security for Small and Mid-Sized Businesses.
Awesome. Thank you so much for going into that. I wanted to give you the space to go over the book. It's an amazing book, tons of information there, but it's one of those things to where the more knowledge that we have in front of us, the better off we're going to be. We talked about that a little bit. So Greg, I want to thank you so much for being on the show once again. A great information. You are a expert, with all the experience that you have, the decades of experience that you have. So we appreciate you being here, and we look forward to having you on the show again. Thank you so much for being here, Greg. All right, folks, we're going to end this show with a quick commercial break. We'll be right back.
Do you have a car sitting around you want to get rid of? Well, here's a great idea. Donate your car now to help local veterans in your area. Yes, just make one fast call to the Veteran Car Donation Program. Within a few days, we'll come and remove your car for free. You can donate any car in any condition. We'll use our vast network to sell it. The proceeds raised go to help local veterans and their families. And you get a tax deduction. And all you need to do is make this free call. Clean your yard up, get rid of an old car, and help the vets. We make it easy. Make this free call now. Book your fast and easy pickup. Call the Veteran Car Donation Program now.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost.
Are you nearly maxed out on your credit cards? It doesn't matter if you're using your credit cards for fun or to survive. At the end of the month, your statements come in, and you can either pay them or you can't. If you can't, late fees and interest rates get tacked on. And now you're struggling just to make the minimum payment due. Do you feel trapped? Am I talking to you? Good, because I personally researched some companies that can help you. They may be able to reduce your credit card balances by 50% and stop the late fees. If you qualify, please call our special debt hotline number right now for a complimentary free 5-minute consultation. Deal with your credit card problem now before it gets much worse and put more money back in your pocket. Trust me, I've been there too. Call right now.
Call 855-993-2096 right now. That's 855-993-2096.
Hey folks, welcome back to Biz Talks. My name is Rick Gutierrez. I am your host, and we've got another expert that's going to be with us talking about wireless networking. And again, when I say an expert, I'm talking about expert, because Mr. Jim Bradfield, who is joining us again on the show, we're talking about decades and decades of experience, not just him, but his family that has been involved in wireless networking since 1897. So Jim, welcome back to the show, sir.
Great to be here. Thank you.
It's always a pleasure to have you. We learn a lot when you are here, and you know, this history that you have with you and your family being in the same industry is just, congratulations to you guys. I mean, that's just phenomenal. I mean, from one generation to another to continue the legacy, that's phenomenal. And you don't see it that much nowadays. So congrats to you and your family for sticking with it and making something of it. So right now, I believe you are calling in all the way from one of the big islands in Hawaii because you're visiting one of your clients. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, we're back again by popular demand.
Well, good. That means that you guys are doing an amazing job, and your clients are, you know, enjoy having you there because obviously you bring all of those expertise. So with that said, you know, let's talk about your family, the legacy. How long have you guys been on there? We talked about that a minute ago. I mentioned that, for instance, 1897. But your company has been working on secure wireless networks for particularly warehouses, right? So let's dive into that and give us a summary of what types and sizes of warehouses you support.
Yeah, so most of the warehouses we work with are really, really large. They're an Amazon style, you know, multi-million square foot warehouse. But we also do the mid-range 500,000 square foot warehouse. And then even 25 or 30,000 square foot warehouse, you know, can be done. Typically, though, it's the larger warehouses that have issues. Now, we've been working with those things, you know, all over the world. We work in all 50 states, even here in Hawaii, actually, in a couple of warehouses they have here, which is kind of unusual that they actually have them, but they do. Distribution centers for local. And then we pretty much work on any kind of warehouse. That would be anything with just a standard little, scan gun kind of a thing that you see like in a grocery store or something like that, applied to a big warehouse. Also, even warehouses with, as advanced as robots and all those kind of things that actually do picking within the warehouse. So we do that kind of thing. We do pretty much everything in a warehouse, including secure networking as well. So just to make sure that everything is on the right track for the customer.
Right. So when you say warehouses from, any range from the mid-sized range to the very large range of warehouses, one of the things that kind of stands out to me, it's got to be some operational issues, right, that happen throughout the entire connectivity of the warehouse. Now, that could be from manufacturing warehouse to maybe inventory warehouse, but your team has probably dealt with some issues, typically addressing in those connectivity issues within those warehouses, right?
Right. Yeah. And so the most prevalent issue is that, you'll get most of the warehouses have use um, day laborers. They could be day laborers or they could be weekly laborers, but they're typically people who are really untrained and they just are trained to do their little scanner. What typically happens is, like the guys you see on that picture right there, those guys are longer term, but the scanner type of people are really, relatively untrained. And so when they can't make stuff work, they just say, "Oh, the wireless doesn't work." Well, you know, right. But that just means because they can't make the network connect and gather the data they want. So, the typical issues that we see are that maybe they've configured the equipment incorrectly. Um, that means that the new wireless network that somebody just put in from corporate is set for whatever corporate standards there are for configuration, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the older equipment can even talk to it. Or it can only speak on a certain frequency, a certain channel, that kind of thing. It doesn't even work with the network. So it goes on and off, on and off, on and off, and what the other kinds of things that we see are that things are packed really tightly. Like they could be having liquids, maybe it's antifreeze or something like that. Well, wireless doesn't go through liquids very well. Maybe it's an air conditioning system for a big AC unit on a roof. Well, that's all metal and the wireless doesn't go through that either. So one of the biggest things is the biggest challenges that we see there are, well, we can't actually make the wireless work around all that with the way it's been originally configured or the way it's been installed. So we do what's called an APOS, an AP access point on a stick test. And we recommend that gets done within your warehouse. For anything that's got a lot of metal or a lot of interference, a lot of areas that can be a real problem, you want to have a real actual warehouse test of what you're going to expect. See an open area like that, no problem at all. You're going to see an open area. Okay, that's fine. And the access points are hung at 25 feet. But the problem is that if you've got a 40-foot tall ceiling and your shelves are at 30 feet and the equipment is 5 or 10 feet above that, well, you're looking at a 40-foot tall obstruction. Well, again, you don't know what's going to be happening there. And so if you don't do the access point on a stick test, the actual test of what it's going to do when it gets in that warehouse, that's when you have a problem. And your handheld scanner has to be tested, and all the devices that you're going to connect to have to be tested because they may not be able to work with the new wireless system that somebody from corporate put in. So those are our biggest challenges within the warehouse.
Yeah, when I tell you that I learn something from you every single time that we have this conversation or a conversation, networks or wireless networks don't really work well or gel well with liquids when they're scanning things. And so that's something that has never crossed my mind, never thought that might be an issue. But for those that are out there watching this show now and they've experienced some of these issues, I mean, it could be anything, right? I mean, Jim, there was a gentleman one time over the phone that basically told me, because he told me that everything was working perfectly on their end and everything looked good, but then they asked me, are you sure there's not a bad connection between the chair and the keyboard? And for a little while, you got to remember the human element, right? Sometimes the human element has a lot to do with, the connection or the bad connection in a wireless network. So there's a lot of times to where the human element plays a big role and there could potentially not be nothing wrong with the wireless network. So thank you for elaborating on that and going through that. That's an amazing thing that you guys are doing. So let's talk a little bit more about a real life example of a serious issue where your team was able to solve a large warehouse, wireless issue.
Well, we had, you're familiar with Cisco, the largest wireless network company in the world. They had what's called a attack case open on a warehouse that manufactures heavy duty machinery. And it's big machinery. I mean, it's the big giant things you see on the roof. And so it's a real blocker of wireless. On top of which they had an open, what they call TAC case, which is the support case, for over 2 years, trying to figure out what the problem was. They called us out, and we found out that there were multiple issues within there. They had access points that didn't have external antennas, so they didn't propagate properly. They had dead spots below the access point. They had the equipment hung over the metal, and so the metal was blocking everything and didn't allow any RF to go anywhere. They also had, if you can believe this, they actually had the barcodes on the bins were legible. So the people who were day laborers kept saying, well, it's the wireless, we can't make anything work, it won't pick it up. But the barcodes were gone. So, you would see the first 4 numbers of maybe a 27-line barcode, and it's gone. So we went and looked at every single one of those things. It's everything that you need to do. You've got to check every part of that, even the wired part of it, even the barcodes, even the configuration, even just everything on the network, in order to make sure that everything is correct.
Yeah, that's something that, like I said a little while ago, just the human element, right? I mean, you got to be able to check all of those things, and when you can and the people cannot, then you call in the experts like Jim. So Jim, we've got a little bit of time left, so I've got another question for you, and that is, any final recommendations you would give to a warehouse management regarding their secured wireless networks? What would that be?
Yeah, so the biggest thing there is doing that access point on a stick test. What that means is you throw that access point up there 25 feet in the air. You either do that with a stick or you do that with a lift, doesn't matter how you do it. And you put it where you think it's going to go. And then you measure that RF. The reason you do that is to make sure that you don't have that metal or the water or whatever's in those containers that's making that thing be a problem. And once you do that, then you actually know what you're going to expect. And then you need to go to do that for every single location for an access point. And the key is that it's the trade-off in money to do that is, what does it cost you to have somebody completely run a new line, completely move that access point, completely redo your network, versus what it takes for about an hour to test each one of those access points. And, and that's kind of the biggest thing right there. And then again, test all those devices that you have in the network. My word, you get a wireless, what they call COW or something like that, computer on wheels. Well, it may not be up to date, and it might not be able to even connect, to the new wireless network. And the handheld scanners have to be updated, and all of that has to be done and tested too. So you have to know exactly what you're doing in a warehouse. There's a lot of different components. There's, we have about a 20, a checklist of about 20 items, I would say, that we go through and make sure is done. And, that's what you need to do for every time you put a new network in.
Yeah, absolutely. So keeping up with updating your technology basically is what's going to give you the best success, right? And making sure that everything stays connected all the time and all of those great things. Hey, Jim, we've had a great conversation once again today on another show, on another episode. We want to thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you, and we look forward to having you again on the upcoming show sometime in the near future. With
My
that
pleasure.
said, yeah, thank you for being here. And with that said, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break and we'll come back with another expert. Stay right there. We'll be right back.
have a car sitting around you want to get rid of? Well, here's a great idea. Donate your car now to help local veterans in your area. Yes, just make one fast call to the Veteran Car Donation Program. Within a few days, we'll come and remove your car for free. You can donate any car in any condition. We'll use our vast network to sell it. The proceeds raised go to help local veterans and their families. And you get a tax deduction. And all you need to do is make this free call. Clean your yard up, get rid of an old car, and help the vets. We make it easy. Make this free call now. Book your fast and easy pickup. Call the Veteran Car Donation Program now.
If you're on supplemental oxygen, heavy and awkward tanks can be a burden. Now you can leave home and leave the tanks behind with Inogen, portable oxygen therapy that moves with you.
With my Inogen, now I'm able to do the things that I've always loved. I just press the button here, and there's my oxygen.
Inogen systems are so small and light, you're free to leave the house without the hassles of an oxygen tank.
I could play golf again. I could go grocery shopping. I'm free again.
With the Inogen, I can handle my own oxygen. I can carry my own oxygen. I go anywhere with this. Look how small it is.
And right now, you can try an Inogen portable oxygen system for 30 days risk-free. Call us right now. If you qualify, we'll send you an Inogen system to use for 30 days risk-free. Your insurance may even cover your new Inogen system.
If you're on oxygen, you need to be using an Inogen.
Call 800-367-1753. That's 800-367-1753.
Hey folks, welcome back to Biz Talk. My name is Rick Gutierrez, your host and your business advocate. Thank you for sticking with us. When I tell you again that I love this show, I've got another expert that's going to be talking to us about a great topic, and you know, this is something that no one can get away from. Every single person in this world has to deal with this particular topic, and that is the reason why I have my very good friend, Mr. John Mitchell, tax attorney expert. Welcome back to the show, sir.
Oh, thank you very much, Rick. I appreciate it. Always happy to come on the show, share some good information with the folks out there. I mean, you know, your intro made me remember that movie. Remember that movie, Meet Joe Black? And the guy says, well, death and taxes. And the guy answers him, well, death and taxes, what an odd pairing. But not so much, because like you say, none of us can get away from either one of those things, unfortunately. So there you go, man. So we're here to help at least with one of the two.
Absolutely, and we're here to help both the living and the dead, right? Because even after we're gone, you know, the ones left that we leave behind, not only will they miss us, but sometimes they may not miss us as much because we may have left a mess behind, you know, when it comes to taxes and whatnot.
You know, I had a phone call like that just this morning. In fact, a wealth advisor called me up and said, yeah, you know, Dad died and left some, you know, inheritance to his kids, but there's this IRS debt, and you know, they're kind of banging their head against the wall, seeing what to do about it. And I said, yeah, I can help out with that. And she said, hey, John, she says, let me ask you this. She says, you know, the decedent, you know, has already passed away. Does the IRS debt continue to accrue interest and penalties? And I said, why, yes, it does. They impose interest and penalties on the deceased. So, you know, that's who you're dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's something, like I said, even when we're gone, we're still not done with it. We have to continue to do it. And this is a topic, that's the reason why you're my favorite tax attorney, because you have been in business for a very long time. And, you know, your expertise in navigating IRS examinations, you know, is, you know, you basically have had tons of advanced strategies that you have employed in some of your cases to help some of your clients. And so let's talk about that a little bit. You know, some of these strategic strategies that you've used to help your clients. You tell us, the audience wants to know, John Mitchell, what all do you do for your clients?
Well, you know, first of all, a lot of times I get the phone call from the people once they've already got the letter from the IRS. Now, hopefully, they called me when they got the first letter, not when the process is almost done and the last couple of nails are going into the coffin, right? But I mean, hopefully they did that. But if they did that, one of the things that I would certainly do is try and do kind of like what an emergency room physician would do, right? Which is called a triage, right? And so if I get a hold of a case, brand new case where there's going to be somebody under examination, well, the first thing I want to do is look for what are the biggest and baddest wolves that can be hiding behind those sheep clothing, right? So I go through the information document request that the IRS sent. If there hasn't been one, I ask for one, and then I would go ahead and try to triage and figure out where's our where does it hurt, right? Like the doctor presses it, does it hurt here, does it hurt there? Okay, so I'm going to try and figure out where is I guess you'd say our main opportunity to be injured by this thing, right? And so, now backing up a little bit, one of the things I do besides just solve problems is to go ahead and take a look at your tax situation before there are problems. So, you've heard of course, the phrase, the best offense is best defense is a good offense. So that is what I could definitely say. The best way to stay out of trouble with the IRS is to not get into trouble in the first place. So,
Right.
Whenever you do your tax returns, you want to make sure you got a competent professional on your side, and you're going to make sure that you are only take in credits and deductions that you're clearly entitled to, and make sure that you have backup for that. Now, you talked about advanced things. Well, one of the advanced things that we can do is called the Cohen rule. And the Cohen rule basically says that, like, let's say you got a business. Okay, no business can run with zero expenses. So they have, let's say, a business that had $1 million top line revenue. No reasonable person thinks that that business didn't have any expenses. So let's say, like here in the great city of Houston, hurricane blows through. That will happen from time to time, right?
Sure.
And so hurricane blows through. Oh my God, guess what? Blew away all your business records, right? It's gone with the wind. So then what do, right? Well, you try and reconstruct the best you can. You go to the bank, you go to the, landlord, get a copy of your lease, et cetera, whatever you can reconstruct. But then we use reports sometimes called Biz Stats. And Biz Stats has gone in and combed through IRS data, in fact, and figured out similarly sized businesses, how many expenses and what type of expenses do they have. And IRS will accept that. Sometimes it takes a little headbutting on my part, but we can usually get them to accept reasonable, and that's what the Cohen rule is, reasonable estimates of what anything that you can't absolutely demonstrate, you can use a reasonable estimate, with some exceptions to that. They're going to be a lot tougher on you with reasonable estimates if you're talking about things like meals, entertainment, travel expenses. You can't say, well, I reasonably estimate that I went to Paris last year, so there's guidelines to it, and there's a different, but that's on me. I'm supposed to know all those rules, and so if you're the client, one of the things I do for you is give you your peace of mind, is what I tell people. So let me worry about the IRS, you worry about living your life. So those are some of the things I could say about that.
And that's a great way to end with that question, because that's your job. That's what we hired you for. That's basically your expertise is what the reason why you're here, and the reason why people are listening to you, because you've been doing this for a very long time. And so that is the reason why we continue to have these conversations, because we bring tons of this great value to all of our viewers and business owners that are watching and all those great things. I've got another very specific question for you in terms of, when representing your clients in a complex tax, dispute, what role does forensic accounting play in your approach? And how do you utilize these tools to uncover critical evidence that support your clients' positions during these litigation times?
Yeah, sure. I mean, one of the things that, like I just mentioned in the last question, I mean, a lot of times people have a situation crop up where maybe through no fault of their own, they don't have, perfect records. And so one of the things we do is try and reconstruct that. I mean, oh, I lost the mileage log that I had for my business miles. Well, can you find me? Repair records when your car has been in the shop, they note the mileage down on that, right? I even have people that recommend, hey, the tax folks, and they'll say, hey, take your car, the first month of the year, January, and take a picture of the odometer, and in December, take a picture of the odometer, and keep those pictures with your car records because that's going to show the mileage. Bank statements, we go through those. Canceled checks, we go through those. We do a thing called a bank deposit analysis, and that's very specific methods that we can use to determine what deposits were made to the bank account, which ones of those are going to be taxable income, and which ones are not. So you use all of those type thing, and then there's some statistical sampling that you can do, right? So you can do some of those type techniques. So that's a lot of it, and sometimes you run into situations. I've been hired in situations where there's a significant kind of doubt about about the records, the business records and such, right? There's cases where there's problems between the spouses, there's divorce proceedings going on, and one thing is to have records that are lost or missing, and you have to kind of fill in the gaps. You can use statistical techniques, you can use extrapolation, interpolation, and the other things that that's one thing if you got just missing records. Another thing, a whole nother level of difficulty is when you got folks out there actively trying to hide things, and so that's when you lean a lot on third party records. To be honest with you, sometimes you don't get the cooperation you would like, and so you gotta kind of piece the puzzle together with whatever pieces you can find through third parties.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I've heard earlier, I heard all kinds of amazing information from you, John, but one of the things that you mentioned earlier was, how do you not get in trouble with the IRS? Is because, well, you don't get in trouble by not getting in trouble, and how you do that is by hiring the right services. We're good at what we're good at as a business owners. We are definitely good at what makes us strong, what feeds the business. But then there are many other things that we may not be experts in, or we may not have the knowledge, and that is basically hiring the right firm to do the bookkeeping, to make sure that all of that is nice and clean, so that when you hire the CPA, everything goes flawlessly. And if there happens to be an issue and whatnot, and you get a letter in the mail, well, then now you have an expert in John Mitchell, which is going to be an amazing partnership because, as he mentioned earlier, his job is to worry about the IRS, and for you to focus on life and business and all of those great things. And so that's the reason why you're here, John, and we appreciate you being here.
Yeah, I'll tell you something funny. My brother is, a savant when it comes to fixing motors. He worked on, jet engines for the Air Force, and has worked on, I guess, any kind of motor you can imagine. And so he's very good at what he does. Now, I am not good with that kind of stuff, and so I don't go out to my garage and try and rebuild my own motor. And so, word to the wise, maybe you don't want to be do DIY in it when it's time to take on the IRS.
Right. So we stick to what we know, we stick to our expertise, and then hire those that are going to help us in other departments. John, it's been another great, amazing episode. Thank you for being on the show. We've learned a lot again from you, so we can't wait to have you on the show again.
Absolutely, man, Rick. My pleasure. I am overflowing with joy and happy that you guys invited me, and I will be back anytime.
All right, we appreciate you. Thank you for so much for being here. All right, folks, we have come to an end of this show, this Biz Talk show for this week. We are excited for the lineup of guests that we have for next week. We're going to continue to bring you valuable content, valuable information from business experts that are going to be here sharing with us. So until next time, take care of each other. We'll see you next week.
This has been a Now Media Networks feature presentation. All rights reserved.
Do you have diabetes? If you have insurance, you may qualify for a new continuous glucose monitor. With a CGM, you can continuously track your levels and trends.